Pat Atherley. I am the Director of the Student Enrollment and Retention Unit here at the Cave Hill campus, which is the unit in which our international office falls. And it is my absolute pleasure to welcome here this morning one of our alumni from the Faculty of Humanities and Education. Her name used to be Dawn Springer. She will probably tell you her new name if she so desires. And Dawn is kind of a special person. I'll tell you a little bit more about her before I do. That other beautiful face you're seeing on screen, Mrs. Paula Jarvis. Paula is the coordinator of international programs and mobilities here at the Cave Hill campus. So she oversees our exchange and study abroad programs. And I have started to tell you that Dawn is a kind of a special person because our exchange partnerships, we have partnerships with many universities all over the world. And while many or most of our students stick within their comfort zones and tend to want to go to North America or at the most to Europe or the UK, Dawn took the path less traveled and she went over to Japan. And, you know, the rest, as we say, is history. And I will let her tell that history this morning, which is why she is here. Dawn is passing through Barbados on her way back to Japan from an international education conference in New Orleans. And she didn't want to pass through without stopping by the international office and saying hello, particularly to Paula. So, you know, we took advantage of her being here because we thought that her story is an interesting one that could help you and our students in particular, current students, to think, you know, a little bit out of the box when you consider going on study abroad. So without any further ado, I want to thank all those of you who have accepted our invitation to be here to hear Dawn speak. And after she makes her presentation, you know, you'll have the opportunity to ask any questions. So we're going to turn you now over to Dawn and enjoy the presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Emily. Let me just make sure the presentation is up.
Yes, I'm seeing it here clearly, Dawn.
So today I'm going to talk to you about my experience studying abroad when I was a Cave Hill student. So if we could get the first slide. You just hit the arrow and it should move. Yes, so I was introduced as Dawn Springer. Until yesterday, I was Dawn Springer, but now from yesterday, I am Dawn Kobayashi. I am 28 years old, and I graduated from Cave Hill in 2016 with a Bachelor's of Arts in Spanish, which may be unexpected, given that I studied abroad in Japan. But yes, I did study Spanish here while I was at UA. And so the university that I studied abroad at is called Osaka Gakuin University. And that study abroad was from 2014 to 2015. Initially, I was only supposed to go for 1 semester, but I enjoyed myself so much that I decided to spend the full academic year in Osaka. And while I was there, I studied Japanese. I mean, I had studied Japanese before I left Barbados. I was studying with a tutor for a few years before I left Barbados. But with that study abroad and other experiences after graduating UWI, I am now pretty fluent in Japanese. I can hold my own in business meetings and conferences. And yeah, it's been a good language learning experience. And altogether, I've lived in Japan for 9 years now. That's including the year that I studied abroad at Cave Hill. And consecutively, it's been 8 years that I have been living and working in Japan. So get the next slide. So why did I choose to study abroad? As I said just now, I was studying Spanish. So naturally, I was looking for study abroad destinations where I could learn Spanish, where I could immerse myself in a Spanish environment. So I went to the international office to see what partner universities would be available. And while I was looking at the list scanning for Spanish universities, I came across a Japanese university on the list. And at that time, since I was studying Japanese, I figured, okay, so this is an opportunity for me to spend an extended period of time in Japan and immerse myself in the language and the culture. But it's not related to my degree. So I went to the international office and I asked, what can I do to be able to study abroad in Japan? So my goals for Spain or any Spanish-speaking country and my goals for Japan were the same. I wanted to immerse myself in the language. I wanted to do cultural exchange. I wanted to broaden my horizons. When you leave your country, you leave your comfort zone and you go outside of that, you learn a lot of things about yourself, about your country, about other countries, and there's a lot of knowledge that can be gained from these experiences. So the why is the same for both destinations in my mind. It just so happened that I had the opportunity to go to Japan, and I decided, let me grab this opportunity because I don't know when next I would be able to study abroad in Japan like this. So where did I study abroad? As I said before, the name of the university is Osaka Gakuin University. It is a private university located in Saita City in Osaka. So I have this map of Japan here for you. Osaka is very, very small. It is either the smallest or the second smallest prefecture in Japan. And it is highlighted in red there for you. Tokyo is a little further up north. So it's part of what they call the southwestern part of Japan. And it's a very, warm, friendly city or prefecture, I'd like to believe. I've spent a fair amount of time in Tokyo as well and other parts of Japan. And I do have to say that Osaka is my favorite place to be. And even within Osaka, I have here on the other side for you, there's a map of Osaka prefecture. Then you have in blue, there's Osaka City. So that's the heart of Osaka. That's downtown, where I guess all the fun stuff happens. And the university is located in the red part called Saita City, which is just to the top of Osaka City. So you can get to Osaka City very quickly from Saita City. It's a very central and convenient location for the university, I think. So Osaka Gakuin University, it is not a very large university. It has a student population of about 5,000 as compared to UU, which has about 6,000. So it's not that big, but it has a robust international exchange program that we have 66 partners in 28 countries and regions. So the international students, they participate in an international exchange program that is run separately to the faculty courses. So the international students come and they study Japanese, they study in English, you can study in English as well, and they participate in all these different activities and programs. And usually nowadays, 40 to 50 international students participate in this program each semester. Before the pandemic, we had bigger numbers. When I was a student at OGU, there were about 80 international students in one semester. But after the pandemic, things kind of slowed down and we're slowly getting back to what used to be the regular numbers for us. But for right now, it's about 40 to 50 international students who participate. So I just want to talk a little bit about what I experienced while I was at OGU. And just to give you a rundown of the program, so there are compulsory Japanese language classes, which are you take in the morning. And then in the afternoon, you have elective classes, which are done in both Japanese and English. You can choose which courses you would like to take. There's also a buddy program where OGU students are paired with international students, just to, make sure you're good while you're in Japan. There is the iChat Lounge, which I will expand on later. There are field trips and cultural experiences. And there's also a program called the Home Visit Family, which I think personally was really beneficial. So first off, the Japanese language classes. So Japanese language classes, you must take them. They are mandatory, and they are divided into 4 or 5 levels, depending on how many students are participating in each semester. So for me, my first semester, the fall semester, I was in the intermediate class, which is, I have a picture here of us. This was a pretty sizable class for the time. And this is, I guess, right middle of the pack kind of proficiency level. So, you can speak, you can write and read a little bit, but maybe not so great, right? So that was the kind of level that intermediate was. So usually there's no going down a level. So for the next semester, you go up a level. And for spring semester, I was in upper intermediate, where it's a little bit more difficult. There's a little more focus on reading and writing kanji and reading more difficult passages like newspapers or like academic texts, that kind of stuff. So this class, your classmates tend to change a lot between the fall and semester. So you can see in my fall semester, it was a bigger class, but in the spring semester, it was how many of us? 8 of us, 70 of us. So not that many. So the classes tend to be very close knit. So the teacher sticks with you for the whole semester. You see them every day, every morning for 2 hours. You're with this teacher. So it becomes a very kind of close knit relationship. And especially for the spring semester that I was in, we all became such good friends that even to this day, 10 years later, we still meet up with our teacher. We go out and have meals. We go out and, hang out together. If I ever go to Korea or Taiwan or Hong Kong, where they're from, I will go and see them. If they come to Japan, they will come see me. So it's a very, kind of close relationship that we have. For the elective classes, there are a number of topics that you can choose from. The Japanese classes tend to be supplementary grammar classes for those who want to study Japanese more. And outside of that, they have classes like the one I took, Topics on Japan, which just is kind of learning about Japanese culture, a little bit of Japanese history, Japanese daily life, just anything about Japan you will learn about in simple Japanese, not too difficult so that you can understand. So this class, you can see, it has a mix of students. So not everybody is from the same proficiency level, but once you, pass the qualifications, criteria for entering the class, you can take this class. In English, I took many courses in English, but one that was really interesting was religion in Japan. So this one, you just learn about all the various traditional religions Japan has, the new religions that came in later, that kind of stuff. And even if the teacher is Japanese, this class was conducted in English. So you don't need to have a Japanese proficiency level to take this class. And depending, I guess, on what you study and how the contracts work out. For me, I was able to get credit from it. Some other students from other universities were not able to get credit for theirs, but that's between you, your university, and OGU. So the buddy program. The buddy program is actually a really helpful program, I think. So every international student is paired with an OGU student to support them during their time in Japan. Now, there's a lot of paperwork and stuff you have to do when you first get to Japan, like registering your address and getting your residence card, all sorts of stuff. So for that kind of paperwork that we do not know about until we get to Japan, the buddy students will help you. They will take you to City Hall and they will translate for you if necessary, and they will help you fill out all these paperworks. And then moving into your apartment, because sometimes Japanese apartments can be very different to what we're accustomed to. So they'll tell you how to use certain things. Like I didn't know how to use the Japanese rice cooker, and they taught me how to use that. They will tell you where to shop, where in the area to go shopping for groceries, what you can buy in the area, like if there's doctor's offices, that kind of stuff, they will let you know that information. They also will come to the school because the building that the international exchange program is in is separate to the faculty buildings. They will come there and they will eat lunch with you. They will talk to you, help you with your homework if need be. They will also organize events and outings. So the program has its own field trips and cultural experiences, but outside of that, the buddy students, they will say, hey, let's go to Kyoto or let's go to Nara, and they'll organize it and take you. And then when you get there, they will explain everything to you. So this picture that I have here, the big group, this was actually a Christmas party that we had in December of my study abroad. They had rented out a whole club for us, and we had a party, and it was a really, really good time. And then here on the other side is a picture from one of the school's festival, where there's a lot of stuff going on in the festival. So you see, we have on our cat ears just because, I don't know, that was the vibe at the time. So usually your paired buddy will help you the most. Sometimes, it does not work out. Me personally, my buddy did not help me very much. She helped me at first when I wanted to open a bank account, but after that, I wasn't really able to contact her. So the other buddies that you see here in the pictures, none of these are my paired buddy, but the other buddies, they will step in and they will help out students. It doesn't necessarily have to be your one pair. So if you don't get along with them, there are a plethora of other students who, you could be friends with, who will be very willing to help you out while you're in Japan. And the iChat Lounge. So the iChat Lounge, the I stands for international. So International Chat Lounge. They have staff from various countries, and the OGU students, they can go to the iChat Lounge and practice speaking English, Spanish, German, whatever they're studying. They can practice conversation in that language. So because of that, the international students coming from so many different countries all over the world, we would go to the iChat Lounge, sometimes just to hang out, do homework, but also to give the OGU students a chance to practice the languages that they are learning. So they have a lot of different events. They have Christmas parties, Halloween parties, just different cultural events, especially if the staff is from a specific country, they would have a cultural event from that country. I remember there was a Mexican-American staff, so we had like a Taco Tuesday, which is really good. Recently, there's some staff from Hawaii, so they have like Spam Musubi, which was really, really popular. In my time, they used to have something called the iPop Band, the International Pop Band, which I have pictures of here for you. So the OGU students who can sing, who can play instruments, they wanted to start a band. And so they decided to do that with the iChat Lounge and get international students who are interested to also join this band. So the iPop Band, generally the big event they work towards to is the school festival, Kishibe Sai, they call it. So Kishibe Sai, which means Kishibe Festival, they have like a stage where the iPop Band does a set for a set number of time. And the picture you see here on the phone and the picture at the top of the three, those are from the Kishibe Festival, where we performed songs that were popular at the time. And then under that, you can see we're all wearing red because it was the Christmas party. So they made me sing Mariah Carey. And yeah, it was a really fun time. But, different events throughout the semesters and the years, they will have performances by this iPop Band. Unfortunately, I don't think the iPop Band is currently there. They've disbanded, mainly because these students that you see in the picture, they've graduated. And I still keep into contact with them now. They have a separate band that they still do. But I am hoping that the current iChat Lounge can restart the iPop Band, because it was a really good way to, exchange, do cultural exchange with the Japanese students in terms of music, because if we have these performances, obviously we have to practice. So I would have to get up at like 6 o'clock in the morning to come to school to practice before class. And after class is finished, I'd go back to the iChat Lounge to practice for these events. So it was a really good opportunity to practice Japanese and to help the OGU students also practice their English, because we would sing mostly in English. So it was a really good experience for both the OGU students and for us, the international students. So with me, it was me, and you can see this guy here, really, really tall guy. He's from America. So we were the two main singers at that point in time. And yeah, we had a really, really good time. So field trips and cultural experiences, there are so many, too many to name, to be honest. So just to experience Japanese culture, you can see this picture here of me in red. So that's a kimono. It's called a hakama furisode. So it's a long, long, long sleeve. And then you have like a skirt from like the waist, a really long skirt. And usually that is worn for graduations, right? So they give us a chance to wear these traditional Japanese clothes, and they let us take pictures and stuff that we can take back. And next to that one, there's this long picture of us with I think that is a dog, I don't know, but it was from a field trip for one of the elective classes in Japanese. And this one was to the Bosai Center. It's like a center in the south of Osaka where they talk about how to what to do during natural disasters. So it's like a disaster prevention center. So Japan, as some of you may know, has a lot of earthquakes. We have earthquakes, volcanoes, hurricanes, lots of natural disasters. So you have to be prepared. So there is talk that there's going to be a big earthquake to hit the Osaka region in maybe a few years. So what this center does is teaches people what to do during and after an earthquake, how to prepare for an earthquake, and they have a simulation where the projected intensity of the earthquake shakes a platform so hard that you cannot stand up. So it's telling you this is how hard an earthquake can shake you, can shake a building, and that's why buildings collapse. So they run you through a course on how to keep yourself safe while it is shaking. After it stops shaking, what do? You turn off the gas on the stove, right? You don't want a fire to start. If you have an emergency bag, because everybody's supposed to have a go bag. So if you have a go bag, you grab the go bag, you go outside. And if anybody's injured, they taught you how to do first aid on any serious injuries. So that kind of information. These field trips are not always just fun, they're also educational. So now I am pretty prepared on what to do during an earthquake, right? So next to that, you see a bunch of sumo wrestlers. This was for our Japanese class. There was a sumo match happening nearby the university. So we went to their morning practice. This again, very early in the morning. We got up and we went to their dojo and we watched their morning practice. And then we got to see how they do the hair, like they put the wax in the hair and they pull it back and they tie it up. We got to see that. And we got to eat breakfast with them because sumo wrestlers tend to eat a very specific diet and they call it sumo champong. So we sat down and had breakfast with the sumo wrestlers after their practice, which was actually very, very interesting. And then on the second row, every semester, we have a poster session. So the students are required to pick a topic, they research it, and they present their findings. That's how it is now. In my year, it was still very in the initial stages, so there was no research done. We just had to choose a topic and present on it. And since nobody in Japan knows what Barbados is, I decided to present on Barbados. And it was actually my presentation was actually one of the more popular ones because people did not know anything about this country. So they came, as you can see, they came to listen to me talk and introduce Barbados. So I was telling them about, green monkeys, macaroni pie, all sorts of things that I could think about to present Barbados to them. And because Barbados being so rare, you see in the next picture, there's a bunch of Barbados flags there, right? And that's because at the school festival, at Kishibe Festival, now they don't do it, but in my year, the international students used to form groups and they would put up a stall and they would sell something. They sell food. So we had to decide what food could we sell that would be, good for a festival. And they asked me, what does Barbados have that we could create, like that we could make right there at the tent and sell? And I couldn't really think of anything. I thought fish cakes initially, but then I was like, where am I going to get fish? Where am I going to get cod? But then I thought about it somewhere. I said, maybe bakes. And they didn't know what a bake was, obviously. So I had to explain it to them. I had to make it and show them and say, this is a bake. You can add cinnamon if you want. You can add whatever you want, really. So they decided, okay, yeah, we're going to do bakes. And so one of the American students made this poster that you see here. We've got Poseidon holding the broken trident because I had explained the flag to them. So she drew Poseidon breaking the trident with the Barbados flag in the background with Barbados face. It was a really nice poster. But the bakes were really popular, again, because Japanese people don't know what Barbados is. And so the curiosity got the best of them. And it was a really good festival. And the last picture on this is one of the field trips that the entire study abroad group goes on together. This one was in Kyoto, where we could learn traditional kimono dyeing techniques. So there's a specific way that they dye kimono in this part of Kyoto. And if you go to this place, you can make a variety of objects. I decided to make a t-shirt. You can make like fans, you can make tumblers, design for your tumblers, that kind of stuff. So you basically choose your item, choose your design, and they teach you then how to dye in the Kyoto Yuzen style, which is how I made that t-shirt, which I still wear to this day, actually. Beautiful. And the home visit family, which I really appreciated a lot. So for at this point in time, 10 years ago, they had the homestay program where as opposed to living in dorms or living in apartments or share houses, guest houses, you could live with a Japanese family. But for those of us who preferred apartments like me, they had the home visit family where you don't live with them, but you're assigned a family and you go out with them maybe twice a month, at least once a month, you meet up with them and they will teach you about, Japanese culture, Japanese daily life, that kind of stuff. So my family was they were very, very welcoming. You can see they have 3 children. So this day we were out at a barbecue and they ended up bringing the entire family. It was the mom, the dad, 3 children, the grandmother, the aunt, and the uncle. Everybody came out to this barbecue, and it was me, and next to me is a Korean student. And for the fall semester, we were assigned to this family, and they were great. Besides this barbecue, we went out to a museum. We went to their house for Christmas to have like a traditional Japanese hot pot kind of. And yeah, we met up with them a good few times. I still talk to them now because they became like a family to me while I was in Japan. So I think this home visit family for those students who opt to live in an apartment or, by themselves, it can be hard to get into contact with Japanese culture on a daily basis or to see how Japanese people live. So this home visit family kind of filled that space there, and it's a really good experience. Right, so that was my experience at OGU. And after I finished my study abroad at OGU, I came back to UE and I completed my Spanish degree. And after I graduated in 2016, I decided to go back to Japan because while I was in Japan, I had gotten a qualification in Japanese proficiency, the Japanese language proficiency test. I got the intermediate level. And the upper intermediate level, actually. And I wanted to get the most advanced qualification. So I decided I'm going to go back to Japan and I'm going to go to a language school. So I enrolled in a language school for a year from 2016 to 2017. That picture you see there with me making traditional Japanese sweets with one of my friends. That was from my language school era. And then we were in Kyoto making traditional sweets. So they were in this language school too, you had the cultural experiences, that kind of stuff. So I studied there for a year. And after that, in 2017, I started working at Nanyo City Hall, which you can see this picture here with the Japanese flag and the Barbados flag. That was from when I was working at Nanyo. And what was I doing at Nanyo? I was working with the 2020 Tokyo Olympics, which I will go into in detail later. But basically, it was an agreement between Japan and Barbados. So we were working with the Barbados Olympic Association to help the Barbadian athletes when it came to them participating in the 2020 Olympics. I will go into detail in that later. And after Nanyo City Hall, I left Nanyo City Hall in 2021. And that year, I started working at Hagoromo University of International Studies. Now, that's a university in Osaka. So I had come back to Osaka. And at that time, I was working in outbound. So I was sending Japanese students abroad and, teaching them about countries other than Japan, also helping out with their English proficiency, that kind of stuff. So I was there for 2 years until 2023. So very recently, in October of 2023, I moved to Osaka Gakuin University. So I went back to where I studied abroad, basically back to my roots, I could say, in Japan. And now I am supporting international students who study abroad at OGU in the same manner that I did 10 years ago. So this picture here at the bottom was actually from last month, where our students from the spring semester, this is from the last day of the spring semester when the students are going back. So we had taken a picture with them. So this is the kind of stuff that I do now. So Nanyo City Hall, what was I doing? So for 4 years, I worked there. I was working with the 2020 Tokyo Olympics Host Town Program. And what the Host Town Program is every country participating in the Olympics was assigned a Japanese city or town to welcome their athletes when they come to Japan. Because Japan is, it's far, it's a different climate, there's a time difference, that kind of stuff. So the athletes can acclimatize to Japan before the games. They were assigned a city or town to help them do that. Now, why I have 2 labels here is because initially I was called a host town promoter, and then I switched to this job on the JET program, which some of you may know, called Coordinator for International Relations, or CIR. And I did the same work, I just had a different title, which is why I have both. So here in the pictures, you can see what we did. To initially, sign the agreement, we had to meet up with the Barbados Olympic Association and various governmental figures. So at the time, we were working with Ms. Maxine Clean for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And so after we signed that initial agreement, there was, the Barbados Olympic Association had to come to Japan to see our facilities. We went to Barbados to meet some of the athletes and the people involved in sending the Olympic team to the Olympics. And in doing so, there were many opportunities for cultural exchange. So I was mostly in charge of getting the agreement signed, making sure communication went smoothly, and organizing these cultural events. So in terms of cultural events, what we did, I went around to every school in Nanyang City to introduce Barbados to the children. So the first round was just introducing Barbados. The second round, we did Barbadian culture, sports, that kind of stuff. The children were very, very excited, as you can see here in one of the pictures. We gave them little booklets that they could take home, but they had a million questions for me. They were all very curious and wanted to learn more about Barbados. And outside of that, we invited Barbadian athletes and a Barbadian musician to come to Nanyang and give performances for the athletes. It was a judo athlete and a track and field athlete, and they both worked with students in the city to have a judo sparring session together, and the track and field athlete worked with the high school athletics club to do a training session together to show them what kind of training Olympic athletes do. So for the students, it was very, very interesting. The musician, she participated with the athletes in a panel discussion at a host town symposium that we held, and she played the steel pan for them. So she came to Nanyang twice, and the first time she participated in the panel discussion and played the steel pan. The second time, she went around to all the schools with me when we were doing the Barbadian culture presentation, and she played different songs on the steel pan, and she taught the children how to play the steel pan as well. So for them, it was a really, enriching cultural experience, learning more about, Caribbean culture, Barbadian culture, and, music and stuff like that. So the last picture that we have here is actually from the very beginning when I first went to Nanyang, and it's me with the ambassador of Japan to Barbados and the mayor of Nanyang City. So, it was a long and very rich and fulfilling 4 years, but I think I was able to adequately introduce Barbadian culture to, it might be a small city, but to Japanese students. And the students that I talked to during my 4 years in Nanyang, they still remember Barbados. They got actually, after I left, they brought in a Barbadian to teach English in Nanyang City through the JAC program. They specifically requested a Barbadian just because the students were still so interested in Barbados and wanted to learn more. So he was there for 2 years actually, and they still keep ties with Barbados to this day. So that's basically my experience. If you have any questions you'd like to ask, I would be more than pleased to answer.
Can you hear me?
Oh, no, I can turn it on for you.
All right, so Dawn, we want to thank you so very, very much for that really exciting presentation on your experiences in Japan. And as Dawn said, it is now your opportunity if you have any questions for her. If you want to know anything more, if you contemplate possibly having a similar experience yourself, now is your chance to ask any questions. Let's see. So you can put your hand up.
Yes, I'm seeing a question here in the chat, Dawn.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, what was the application process like?
Okay, well, the application process actually was not very difficult. It was 10 years ago, so bear with me. But I remember I went to the international office and I spoke to Paula first to ask about the options available to me. So there was an application form that you have to fill out. And usually what you do is you go to the university that you're interested in, you go to their website and see what courses are available for you, because you have to find equivalent courses at Cave Hill for you to, match with at the university. So that was the first thing I did, but unfortunately I was not sure, did not have the information online yet for the time that I would be studying. So I could not find equivalent courses at that point in time. But I did fill out the application form, and you also have to write, or in that time, I'm not sure if now, you had to write like an essay kind of arguing your point. Why should you be allowed to study abroad? So I had to argue basically, why should KFIL send me to Japan as opposed to Spain? So I did that. And then after you pass your internal application at KFIL, then you can be nominated to apply for, I guess for me it was OGU. So once you have that partnership, you can get nominated. And once you are nominated by your home institution, generally speaking, OGU will not reject you. So at that point, you're basically pretty much accepted, and then you just have to follow the instructions that come from the OGU side, which was nothing too difficult. You just have to get the documents ready for your visa and that kind of stuff.
Hey, thank you, Dawn. And the application process does remain the same for the KFIL campus. So you do get that form. You look for those courses, you'd have your advisor or your departmental head assist you in determining whether or not they will be considered equivalent. And then, as Dawn said, we go from there. So we have another question. How is school in Japan versus KFIL?
Okay. University in Japan can be very different to what we are accustomed to, I think. Well, for me, that was the experience. And why I say that is because while I was participating in the international exchange program, because I had the Japanese proficiency, I did take faculty courses. So I was taking courses with Japanese students in their class. And the main difference for me is Japanese universities, they're hard to get into, like they have to take exams. So once they don't do well on this exam, they don't get into the university, right? So they're hard to get into, but very, very easy to graduate. And the reason I say this is because Japanese students, if they don't go to class, even if they don't go to class, they will get their credits, right? So a lot of students tend to they would hang out with us in the International Center's lounge. And I would be like, don't you have class? And they're like, no, it's okay. I just have to hand in my report at the end of the semester and I'm fine. And for me at Cave Hill, it was like, well, I had to be in class every day and I had to be doing my work, handing in my essays and this stuff. But for them, that is not quite the same. So you have these students who are very serious and, they are on top of their homework and they do what they have to do. But then I want to say the majority of students, they are not so serious about it because the system is simply different in Japan. If they take the final exam and they hand in their report, then they tend to get the credit. So I feel like there's a difference in the way we approach university classes. The international students tend to be a little bit more serious because they need their credits to graduate. They need to do this, they need to do that. Where the Japanese students were a little bit more laid back and, because for Japan, the only time really they get to themselves to go out and have fun with their friends and play is during university. Once they graduate university and they start working, there's no break for them. So they use this 4 years to, be young people basically. So I think that's the difference between how we approach university.
Now, don't I have two questions? One, I want to find out why were you studying Japanese before you went on the exchange? What led you to that? And then the second thing I want to ask you is now, as you indicated, normally when students are going on exchange, they have to find and, pretty much match to their courses. And then that would have been a little difficult in terms of this exchange. So I want to know, how did that impact your program here, completion of your program?
Okay, so the reason I started learning Japanese, I'm going to be honest with y'all, I was watching a lot of anime when I was like 16, and I would watch them with subtitles, which is fine. But I personally did not like having to read the subtitles because then you miss what's happening on the screen. So I figured if I could speak Japanese, then I wouldn't have to read subtitles anymore. So that's why I started learning Japanese, and it kind of just snowballed from there. And now I don't even watch anime all that much. So, but the Japanese helps in other ways. And for the equivalent courses, because the course information did not go up until I think just before I left for Japan, I could not find equivalents before I left. So after I got to OGU, I was given, the course offerings, and I was in contact with my the dean, and at that time, the professor who was helping me with my study abroad, Dr. Puhala Soto, and she helped me find what could possibly work as equivalents. I gave her the courses that I was interested in taking, and she would say, okay, this one could work, this one can't work. And she kind of went through them for me. And I think because there was so much uncertainty, what we decided, I think at the start of the fall semester was I would do all of my elective courses in Japan. And then when I came back to Barbados, I would have to finish all of my requireds because there was no way for me to do a Spanish course while I was in OGU, so I couldn't get any of my Spanish credits. So all of the electives that I could do from the other courses and stuff, I did that in Japan. And because I ended up staying 2 years, I had to do 2 semesters worth of electives. So because also we were so unsure as to which ones would then be, taken for credit and which would not, I just did a lot. So I think at each semester, I took maybe 5 or 6 elective courses at OGU, just so I would have the number. And I brought them back to UE. And after that, they searched through the Cave Hill system. And because there weren't enough courses at Cave Hill that I could use as equivalents, we ended up borrowing courses from Mona and from St. Augustine. So I had taken like courses on Japanese history, and there was a course like that at Mona. So they put that one on my transcript because it's all UE, right? So that was what we ended up doing. And for my 3rd year at UE, my last year, I had to take both 2nd and 3rd year required courses simultaneously so I could get my credits and graduate on time.
Very good. So your faculty really worked with you.
Yes.
That
Very much.
experience paid off for you. Do we have any more questions? You can put them in the chat or you can raise your hand.
Yeah, Abigail has her hand up. So Abigail, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes. Abigail, you can open your microphone.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Abigail.
Hi, Dawn. My question is, what advice would you have for like someone who wants to immerse himself into learning a new language? And if you could just share, what was your favorite phrase or word to say in Japanese?
Okay, so if you want to immerse yourself in a language, if you are unable to go to a country which speaks the language, what I did before I went to Japan was I watched a lot of TV shows and not anime, because anime is voice acting. So, they will enunciate, and they will speak in specific ways that Japanese people generally would not use when they're speaking naturally. So what I did, I watched a lot of talk shows, what Japanese people call variety shows. It's like game shows mixed with talk shows where people spoke naturally. And I would watch them and mimic the way Japanese people spoke. So I could hear real life, like slang, the real life intonation. Even if I wasn't in Japan at the moment, I could still immerse myself in the natural way of Japanese speaking. And once I got to Japan, though, people think that it's easy to immerse yourself once you're in the country, and that's not necessarily the case, because if you don't have that level of proficiency, it is hard to talk to people. And sometimes, people are shy. It might be overwhelming. So just because you're in Japan doesn't mean necessarily that you can immerse yourself. So what helped with that was the buddy program at OGU, because the buddies will come and talk to you. You don't have to necessarily go to them, they will come to you. And so it would give you an opportunity to use the language that you have, the proficiency that you have, to immerse yourself, and you feel more comfortable. As you feel more comfortable talking and conversing with people, you get bolder, you get more confidence, and so you then can go and talk to people, and it would be a better immersion experience for you. And my favorite phrase in Japanese is actually in Osaka dialect, because I've been in Osaka for so long. So they have this phrase called "nande yanen," and "nande yanen" just means, what are you talking about? Like, what are you saying to me right now? That kind of stuff. So Japanese, Osaka people, they use it a lot. So I tend to use "nande yanen" as well, just because, you're in Osaka, you get influenced. And so I say it too.
Okay, we have Robina. Robina Nichols, you can unmute yourself, Robina, and ask your question.
Thank you, Paula. I have 2 questions, and I joined late, so forgive me if you have addressed these before. I'm curious as to your why behind the study abroad experience. Kind of like what were you hoping to achieve from that experience? And then I want you to, as you think about your attitudes and beliefs before your study abroad experience, how have they changed after your study abroad experience? So those are my two questions.
Okay, thank you. So the first question, I guess the why behind was for me, I was studying Spanish, and so I had wanted to go study abroad anyway. So I wanted to do language immersion, cultural immersion. I wanted to broaden my horizons. I wanted to gain knowledge. That was my reason for going to study abroad, no matter the destination. So for me, it wasn't really so much of where I was going, it was what I was going to do. I wanted to learn more about the languages I was studying, and I wanted to learn about the culture of the countries that speak these languages. Those were the main things for me. So it's not really related to Japan per se. It's just going abroad and learning. My thing was just learning more. That's all I really wanted to do. And the second question, which was, sorry, I was talking and I forgot the second question.
Was the second question, Rodina?
Oh, right, attitudes and beliefs.
Oh,
Yes.
sorry. Right.
Yes.
Sorry, I
So,
had-
that's a really good question. Before I left, when I had initially, started telling people that I am going to Japan, there was I had mixed reactions from a lot of people, to be honest. Bajans around me. My parents were like, go ahead, have a good time. But the people around me, a lot of them were worried for me because they have this, I guess, stereotype that in Asia, they don't like Black people. No, I'm not going to say that's not true, but I don't know that. Like, you don't know that for sure. That's a stereotype that we have. Have you ever been to Asia to confirm this yourself? So my thing that I thought about before I left, I wanted to go in with a blank slate. Like, of course, I would research, gather information about Japan, Japanese culture, that kind of stuff. So, you don't do anything rude, of course, but I just wanted Japanese people to tell me how they are. So I went in with a blank slate. I would not assume that they're going to do something to me because they're Japanese, or they're going to do anything, not specifically because they're Japanese. I just wanted to go. I would watch them. They would talk to me. I would talk to them, and I would learn because, Japan, as with any other country, is made up of individuals. Not every Japanese person is the same. Yes, there are racist people, but there are also people who are the absolute opposite of that. So I just tried to go in with a blank slate, and they would tell me how they are.
Thank you so much. I have a follow-up. I know that given your experience, you probably obviously would have reflected and noted that there is some instances where the culture was different than the culture that we have, and also could be some instances where the culture was similar to our own. I just want to know if you can tell me if anything shocked you.
Shocking, honestly, I don't really think anything shocked me per se.
Okay.
I tried very much to keep an open mind. So most of the time, even if something was different from Barbados, I was just like, oh, okay, well, that's how they do it in Japan, I guess. So nothing really surprised me in that way. I think most of my surprise came from probably the similarities in different aspects. And it's really kind of like trivial things, like minute things, like, okay, so in Barbados, if you hear a siren, ambulance or fire, you run to the window and you malicious and you want to see what's happening. They do the same thing. So I remember at work, an ambulance came to the city hall, and the Bajan and me wanted to run to the window to see who was getting taken to the hospital. But I said, no, I'm in Japan. Like, I have to sit down at my desk. I have to be here. Everybody gets up and run to the window, like, who they come here for? Where am I? Am I in Nani or am I in Barbados? That kind of stuff. So those kind of things were surprising, but in a good way.
Thank you so much.
Another question, Rubina?
No, I could go on all day, but so I don't want to hug the show. Thank you.
I want to know what did you find most fascinating or most challenging to adapt to?
Okay. Yes, in terms of challenging, one thing about Japanese culture that is challenging for me is I am not sure, okay, so like how friendship works. For me, friendship in Japan is very, very difficult. In Barbados, I guess, you're raised in a culture, so you understand, but I feel like it's easier to talk to people and develop that kind of connection, that relationship with people it's easier in Barbados. In Japan, they have like a wall and they have these words for it. So they have honne and tatemae. So honne is someone's true feelings, what they really think. And Japanese people don't say that. They keep it inside. They are not going to tell you what they actually think. They use tatemae, which is the way I see it. I personally see it as lies, basically, because they put up a front and they don't tell you what they truly think. They tell you what they think you want to hear. And to them, it's normal. So they're not seeing it as lying, you know, they're seeing it as being polite. They're seeing it as interacting with persons in the proper way. But for me, I want to hear how you feel. I want you to tell me what you think. So it's really hard for me to adapt to the honne and the tatemae. So a lot of the times, in everywhere I've worked, they always tell me you are so blunt. You are brutally honest. And I'm like, yes, because I'm not going to lie to you. I'm going to tell you what I think. So of course, you know, there's a time and there's a place for everything. I'm not going to do that in every single situation, but especially in interpersonal relationships, I don't see the need for the tatemae. So I kind of go straight to honne, and they always tell me, like, they never say it in a bad way. They always say, you're just so blunt. Like, it's good to talk to you because you're not going to sugarcoat, you're not going to lie. And I'm like, exactly that. But that's something that I don't think I will ever be able to adapt to because I just don't like the whole lying, basically. Yeah.
Interesting. Do you have any more questions, Paula, in the chat?
I don't see it in the chat, but my question to Dawn, in terms of food, in terms of your hair, your skin, things that we may think are basic, did you have access to resources to assist you whilst you were, well, on exchange, and now that you're living in Japan?
Yeah. On exchange for food, I kind of just went with, you know, eating Japanese food because I should have, but I didn't take like seasoning with me. There's certain things I felt like I should have taken with me now that I didn't. So I had to, you know, eat Japanese food, which, you know, Japanese food is really good. Like you will find something to eat, but sometimes, you know, you just want that flavor from home. So after study abroad, when I went back the second time, I took a lot more with me. And these days, whenever I'm home, like now that I'm home, I'm going to stock up on my seasoning, on my Eclipse biscuits, my tea times, everything that I could take back with me. It's just like I have a little piece of Barbados with me. And, you know, seasoning food, you can get a variety of spices in Japan, but because it's not spices that they use normally, they tend to be pricier. Like you can get, for example, you can get jerk seasoning at import shop, but how much are you going to pay for that jerk seasoning? For like Bajans, when we washing our meat, when we cleaning our meat, and we do, you know, the lime and salt, and then getting a single lime in Japan costs $2 US. And yes, I have bought a lime for $2 US just because I wanted to fry some fish. But that kind of stuff, I just thought limes would be there, you know, but apparently not. So those are things that, you know, you don't really realize until you get there. And like my skin and my hair, I have really dry skin. I have eczema as well, so I can only use certain lotions. And surprisingly, Japanese people don't use lotion. So I go in this supermarket, at the pharmacy, drugstore, and I'm looking for lotion. I can only find these little bottles that they use for like hand lotion. I want for my entire body. So I'm looking for these bigger bottles and I cannot find them. At first, I would get my brother to send me some from Canada, but I think in recent years, they've, you know, been more into the skincare thing and, you know, moisturizing. So I've seen bigger bottles in the supermarket and I've been buying those, but it's really, really hard to find lotion that works for dry skin as well. And for my hair, I do my hair myself because there's nobody, I have locks and there is nobody to relock my hair in Japan. I think now you might find some more people, but when I initially went up, there was nobody to do it. So even on exchange, I had to learn from my hairdresser how to relock my hair using mirrors. And I've been doing that so long now that I don't even need the mirrors anymore. Like at this time, I just do it myself. I bought the tools the last time I was in Barbados and I relock it myself. But moisturizers, I just make sure I look for very moisturizing, like with argan oil, that kind of stuff. You can find them some places. So I do that. Or if I go to America or I come home for like business, I will stock up while I'm there and take them back to Japan. So I have something to use on my hair.
Do we have any
Questions from our students?
I don't see any, but anybody who, oh, here's a hand from Abigail. Yes, Abigail, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes, please. Thank you for answering my previous question. I have another one. I too would love to look into studying in Japan. And what are some of the essential things that to know, or how could I prepare before, making such a big move like that?
Essentials. Come knowing that Japanese people love rules. It doesn't really matter what the reason is behind the rule, and it doesn't matter if they agree with the rule, but the rule is the rule, and they will follow it to the letter. So even if it doesn't work for your situation, if it is applicable, they will apply. So and that's something that I have not had issues with, but kind of run into obstacles, especially with paperwork. So when you come to Japan, you have to get your visa, you have to get your residence card, you have to register your residence at City Hall, that kind of stuff. So your name, for example, you decide how your name is going to be written before you come using their alphabet. And once you decide that, you can't change it. So you have to remember what order you put your name in, what specific sounds you use for your name, because if anything differs down the line, then you run into trouble, like with your bank account, with all kind of stuff. So, sticking by the rules, being particular, paying attention to details is something that will help you have a smoother transition into Japan. I think they're very detail oriented, and yeah, the paperwork can be a lot, but they will tend to explain it to you as you go through it. It's just sometimes it can be complicated and overwhelming. So it's really, really good to research exactly what some procedures are before you go and do it, just so you have that understanding of what you're going to do. That kind of stuff, I think, would be good to remember.
So thank you.
Actually, from Wanda, sorry. What is the healthcare system like?
Okay, so healthcare in Japan is so they have the National Health Insurance Scheme, and everybody has to enroll in that. Once you have resident status in Japan, you must enroll. And it is the country pays 70% and you pay up to 30%. So when you actually go to the doctors, the full price, you only pay up to 30% of that, depending on your status, if you're a student, if you're working, that kind of thing. So you can go, once you have your health insurance card, you can go private, public, it doesn't matter, you only pay up to that 30%. And in terms of the actual health care, it can be hit or miss. In terms of like dental work and so that kind of stuff is fine, and that's also covered by insurance. Dental work is covered. But when it comes to, for example, dermatology and stuff dealing with your skin, it can be different. A lot of doctors have preconceived notions about foreigners. So a lot of us tend to be heavier than Japanese people. We're bigger, we're heavier. So a lot of the time people just tell me, okay, so lose weight, you're too fat. That's the problem. And I'm like, I don't think that's why I'm breaking out in hives in the summer. I feel like it's a different problem. But that kind of stuff does happen. So it might be beneficial to find a clinic that speaks English, because then they would know more about foreigners. If you end up in the countryside and there's no other options, then that's you kind of just have to put up with it. But sometimes they do have preconceived notions, and even the medical staff, so that's something that you have to deal with. But in terms of actual care, like facilities, it's very the level is very high, so you can trust that. That's completely fine.
Okay, now I know we're coming close to the end, but I wanted to ask you, Dawn. I don't know if you're working in international student support back in the university.
I thought we did.
So I want to know whether you see that in terms of your future career. How has your study abroad experience influenced, your career goals and future plans in terms of career?
Yeah, so working in international administration, in university administration is not something I ever thought I would do, because initially I wanted to do translation and interpretation, but I think the study abroad really influenced me, because the study abroad is the whole reason I ended up working with the Tokyo Olympics and stuff like that. So if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't be able to be in the position that I am today. So it really did change the trajectory of what I thought I would.
Over there in Japan?
Disability support can be very robust or it can be lacking. There are certain, because every municipality is different. So some cities and towns are very, very robust in their support. For example, the city I lived in, Nanyo, in the north of Japan, they had a policy to make the entire city barrier free. So it doesn't matter what facility you're going to, they had disability access. You're in a wheelchair, you can absolutely get into any building in the city. That was their policy. In other cities, it might not be as good. They would have some buildings equipped with access and some buildings not. In terms of getting around, for example, in the train stations, you absolutely can ride trains. It's just that they need to put a ramp between the platform and the door. So you have to call ahead. You have to make an appointment with the train station, what time you're going to ride the train, which train, like where you're going to go. And they will have staff on hand with the ramp waiting for you so that you can get on and off the train at your destination. So there's a little bit of not paperwork, but there's a little bit of stuff you have to do before you can ride the trains, but that's no problem. There's no real barrier in terms of that. And some older stations may not have elevators and stuff like that. So sometimes you have to be sure of which stations you can and cannot use, but they will have options for you. So in bigger cities, I don't think there will be much of a problem.
What about at the university?
At our university, there are elevators in every building, so you can get up and down to your classes fine. There are ramps into every building as well. So the university that I work at is very accessible. The one I used to work at before it's an older building. So that university, only one building really was accessible. And then you'd have to go around the walkways between buildings. It was not very convenient. So that too is also hit and miss.
All right. So, but in terms of visual disability, when we have to learn the different counting and things that we will have to do within the first year.
For visual disabilities, I do know some students with visual disabilities from my previous university. I think it's more of I guess learning the roads. They have I can't remember the English word for it, but they have the blocks on these in these sidewalks and in buildings and stuff, the raised blocks so that you can plot your path with. If you have the stick, you can use the blocks to get around. And also when crossing roads, they have audio cues as well. So when the stoplight has changed, the sound will change so you can walk, or when it's about to change back to red, they have audio cues as well as in the stations, there's audio. So I think I would have to do more research into it, but they do have these ways of making it more accessible for visual disabilities specifically.
I was wondering because to go over there, you have to spend time learning the language. Like you can't differentiate kanji or the different other Japanese languages or writing styles. Would the proficiency allow for just a verbal proficiency?
Pardon, if they can.
If they will allow for just a verbal proficiency, if you're able to speak and understand the language, even though you may not be able to see the language to write it.
Oh yeah, no, that would be fine because there are lots of students who have these disabilities as well and they study abroad. So it does depend on where you're going. You'd have to go to, if you're going to a school, you'd have to go to a school that does cater. But I don't think that would be a problem because there are Japanese students themselves who have these issues. So I don't think it would be a problem. At my university, personally, I don't think we have ever, or that I know of, that we have had someone with a visual disability. So I'm not sure what our procedure would be like, but the university, the faculty courses, they have that, and they have the student support center. They have, what is it called? The Disabled Student Support Center. So you can go there and they will help you with how they provide this accessibility for Japanese students. It would be the same way for international students. So there is a support center that you can go to help you out.
All right, thank you.
Sorry. We do have to get Dawn going. We do have a few more appointments on campus, so I'm going to let Sarah, has been trying to ask a question, I think. Sarah Downs, are you still going to answer a question? And then in the chat, we have a question from Tanya. Is your name to be written in, is it haranga?
Hiragana.
Oh,
Hiragana, katakana, kanji.
Katana?
Katakana.
And it looks like kanji. So you can make the words correct, but Tanya's answered that question. So if Sarah, if you still want to answer your question, Sarah, and Sarah has been approved to go on exchange, but she will not be going to Japan. So we do know she has a love for international learning.
Okay.
We're not hearing you, Sarah.
Oh, hi, can you hear me
Okay,
now?
yes, we're hearing you now. So as we wait for Dawn to place her information in the chat, I just want to thank all of you for joining us. Ms. Adderley will give the official closing remarks, but this says to me that we have an interest in studying abroad. Even if you don't do it at the campus, maybe you will do it after you've graduated, but we do hope that you will reach out to the international office to see what options are available to you so that you can add that global component to your UWI degree. So Dawn has added her information in the chat, and when she returns to the screen, she'll tell us which of the languages in Japanese.
So those would be the three ways that I write my name. The first one is katakana, which I would use at work in like emails and stuff like that. The second one is only my last name can be written in kanji. So that's my alias, which I use in administrative work. So like at City Hall, all of my stuff is labeled with kanji. And if I'm using anything that is based off of my residence card, I will use the English in all caps.
Right, okay, so that brings us to the end of our presentation by Dawn Springer Kobayashi. Dawn, it has really been a wonderful session. We thank you so very, very much. And I hope that it has helped to, motivate some of our students who may be thinking of going to study abroad to think of, some of the alternative places that we have. Last year, we sent our first student to South Korea. So, students are beginning to get a little bit more brave. And we want to really congratulate you on how well you have done, both in terms of the study abroad, but then, where it has taken you. So it's really a lesson for all you students, where we call these study abroad experiences, one of our high impact learning experiences, and you never know what that may mean for your future. So we want to thank Dawn again, and also thank all the members of our CIRU staff that have helped to facilitate this session, Paula, of course, our coordinator of international programs on mobility. We want to thank Rosemary and Andre who helped to set up this session, and also, the entire staff. So thank you, all of you students who have joined us, students and some staff as well who have joined us for this session. And you can look forward to, other sessions as our students go and come back and share their experiences. So thank you and have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you.
Sorry, Dawn and Ms. Adley, just before we go, some students have some additional questions. So I'm
Sure.
saying to them, reach out to the international office. I set our email there in the chat, and then we can always, put them in contact with you, and they will get a response. So thank you again,
course.
everyone.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.